So one of the challenges I've also discovered with the Jaguar S-Type R is that whilst it might not be burning oil, it certainly seems to be leaking oil, because what can happen on occasion is there'll be a sort of a burnt oil smell coming through into the passenger cabin. So that would kind of suggest that maybe there is some sort of oil leak just coming down, perhaps maybe from the valve covers or the camshaft covers, going through down onto the exhaust manifolds. Now it only really takes a few drops to make that smoke up, and then that could potentially be drawn into the passenger cabin. So what I want to do is to see if I can try and get a camera down around the V to have a look to see whether I can see any sign of leakage from the cam cover. It's probably not going to come out too great on camera. I'll do the best I can, but the mirrors are showing me where the cam cover gasket area is meeting the cylinder head, and I can see just by maneuvering this around and looking down that there is some evidence of oil leaks. Yeah, just where the front engine cover meets the main block, there's also evidence of oil leak as well. So we're going to have to crack on and look to remove the cam cover and place a gasket with a genuine Jaguar gasket. Okay, so we've just removed the PCV valve attachment there. I've just loosened off the wiring harness, but I've noticed that it is actually held on by this bolt down here rather than an attachment, so I'm gonna have to free that off first to get that off, but I'll do that as part of the head. Meanwhile, I've been able to disconnect the coil packs, and there's the connectors there. It's quite straightforward, and I've removed them, and this isn't going to come out too well, but some of these welds do have a reasonable amount of oil in there, which means that the spark plug boss seals are probably a bit knackered, so they're going to have to be replaced, as well as the main gasket for the cam valve cover. So now I'm going to start just having a go at some of these bolts here, just to start freeing off the head. There's a particular order with that, so I would recommend you consult the Jaguar manual to do that, and I'll be doing that and following that quite religiously just to make sure that I don't damage anything. So over here I've just started sketching out where things go in terms of bolts. These are magnetic scribble pads, and here you can see the 4 coil packs that have been removed, and you can see the evidence of oil on some of these here. So I've been able to remove all of the screws here. I've got the wiring harness just hooked there with a bungee strap just to keep it out of the way. Point to note, down here there's an 8mm earthing strap which is on the other side of that wiring loom. Quite a pig to get to, so I ended up having to get out a flexible wrench ratchet, an 8mm one, to try and get behind there, and eventually it came out. It was pretty much seized in, so I had to use some WD-40 penetration fluid to try and ease that and leave that for a couple of hours. You can see here the bores, there is evidence of a little bit of oil in there in some of these, and you can see some evidence of oil on that top lip of the cover as well. So next step is to lift off this whole cam cover and get it away and start cleaning it up. and then start preparing the surface for the new gaskets and seals. So the head's now off, and if you take a closer look just above the exhaust shield, you can see there's quite a lot of evidence in the kind of drip guttering of the oil leak. Some of that's come off with the gasket removal, but some of it looks like it's been there a while, which suggests that the cam cover gasket has indeed been leaking away. We've got evidence of that. So now you can see the spark plugs. They weren't particularly covered in oil, the spark plugs and the ports, but they're looking a lot clearer now. And if you just come over here, you can see down here, that's what we've managed to extract just from some of the spark plug ports just there. So the cam cover's now back on, and what I've done is taken the opportunity to torque up in this particular sequence here. So they've now been torqued to the recommended 12 Newton meters. So this is a 2003 4.2 supercharged, so that's the Jaguar recommended settings, is 12 Newton meters. So the engine harness is now clipped back into place, and that oh so difficult to do earth, which is down there, is all connected up safely. So everything's all snapped into place. So I've loosely placed back the loom for the coils, and what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and fit the coils. Okay, the coils are back in place, and I've torqued these nuts to 5 Newton meters, which is the specification required. So now, before I put the covers back on, I'm just going to clear the area of tools and then start her up and make sure everything's okay. Then after that, I'll put the covers back on. So I'm pretty happy with this so far. She's just warming up, and I've just been looking around with the mirrors to see if there's any leaks on this side, the right hand side bank that I've done, or driver's side in the UK. All good so far. Just come up to temperature nicely, no misfiring or anything like that. And most importantly, no oil leaks, which is good news. So today I'm going to be looking at replacing the coils on the right bank. So we replaced the cam cover gasket and the spark plug boss seals on the right hand side just a few days ago. So I'm going to pop off the spark plug panel, and I'm going to look to see if I can get these replaced. So I'll be using 4 of them. I'm going to be using the Lucas parts, the AJ810445. These aren't quite the same as the original. The originals are Denso, these are Lucas, so they're probably made in China, but they're a mid price point, so they should be okay. What I'm going to do is, for each of these, I'm going to make sure I'm going to use some dielectric grease, some silicone grease. Really important. So just stick it on in the end there, so it means that in time, if they ever have to be replaced, they should put out cleanly. Because what can happen on some of these, the glue can get affected by the heat from the engine, and when you pull these out, sometimes that boot doesn't come off. But you can avoid that by using some dielectric grease on the ends there. Whilst I'm in there, I'm also going to be looking to replace the spark plugs. It's the 4 spark plugs. So again, I'm using these ones. There's various choices, but the important thing is, certainly for the S-Type V8, is to use the iridium ones. So I think you can get a Denso iridium, a Champion iridium, and also an NGK iridium. So these are the Champion ones, again sort of a mid-spec. Now with these, I did actually check to make sure that the gap was okay. So I think with the V8s, the Jaguar AJ33 V8, you do need to have a gap of something between 0.35 and 0.40. So I used my trusty, slightly weathered feeler gauge set and checked every single spark plug, and these came out at around 0.38, so I'm happy with them to go ahead and install them. As you can probably notice on here, we've actually got a different style of coil. So these two are the same, these two are the same, but you can see a difference. I suspect these are the original Denso manufactured ones. We'll be able to have a look, it'll probably have it written on there, whereas the others are just replacement ones. So let's see how we get on and get these whipped off. So that's the coils just extracted just now. Now the interesting thing is that this one, the boot failed to come off, and it's still stuck in there, so I'm going to have to look at that. And also the same for this one at the end as well, which is really annoying. But it looks like I'm just going to have to try and use some pry tools just to try and encourage the broken boot out of the recess. If I come down here, you can actually see the ones I've removed. So you can see this one here, the glue's failed on it, which is why it's only partly come out. Here you can see this looks like an original one. I'm just looking to see if there's any. Oh, there we go, look at that. So you can see that one says Denso, made in Japan, so you know you got a good quality one there, so I'll definitely be hanging on to that. Same here as well, obviously, and look, surprise, surprise, the boots come off this one as well. Well, I'll be honest, I'm not thanking the person who put these replacement coils in and didn't borrow of any dielectric grease. You can see the state of what I've had to get out here. Same on this side over here, quite fiddly, and it needed me to use a wide collection of pickers to get the boots out. What I actually did was I sprayed some brake cleaner lightly down there, and then used this to soften up, just to get between the side of the boot and the cylinder area. Then I was able to start using this one, and with the help of them ones, and eventually managed to pull them out. So all the spark plugs are out. They're looking a little oily, just because I think there's some residual oil just outside the seats. There's my bores. So now I'm just gonna start fitting up the new spark plugs into place. So the new spark plugs are in. You can just see them down there in the bores. I've torqued them to 27 Newton meters each. So now it's just a case of putting back the new coils. So I've unpacked the 4 new coils, and what I'm going to do before I put them on the car is I'm just going to make sure I've got some of this dielectric grease, silicone grease, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a dab at the end of the tip there, so this way the boot shouldn't get stuck on like those other two we saw. So I've greased the end of the boot, and now I'm just gonna offer this new coil up onto the spark plug. So it should just be a little bit of resistance, not too much though, because remember I've just put grease on these, and that's sitting in there quite nicely and quite squidgy. So I'm just going to repeat that for the rest of them. So these are now offered up into place. So what I'm going to do is look to connect the coil connectors back onto these whilst they're loosely sat on the spark plugs. Then once I've connected them all up, I'll then look to put the bolts back in, the securing bolts for each of these coils. So the coils are now fully on and fully secured, torqued to 5 Newton meters. So next I'm just going to replace the cover on here, and then after that I'll just test the engine to make sure she's going to be alright. A little bit of blue smoke on startup from the right bank, but only a tiny amount, and that'll just be a little bit of the oil that got into the cylinder from the spark plug bore. just from where the cam cover had previously leaked prior to me replacing the cam cover gasket and the spark plug boss seals. But now she's settled down to a steady idle. I'm very pleased with that. All good. So the weather's forecast to be quite rough today in terms of wind and rain, so given that changing the gasket for the left hand cam cover is going to take quite a while, it's probably going to take a good few hours at least, I've kind of thought it would be appropriate to have the canopy or the gazebo erected so that I don't get called out by the weather halfway through, because that's just really annoying. I just want to crack on and get this job done. I've only got today to do it. So in terms of what I'm going to do, I'll take the cover off. That's nice and straightforward. I'm then going to remove the air pipe here. There's a cross ply fitting for this Jubilee clip here. There's the oil breather connection hose here, which I'll take off. I'll also take off this Jubilee clip here as well, loosen it off, remove that. Then once I've done that, I'm gonna disconnect the Denso mass airflow sensor connection here as well. And if I'm not too mistaken, down here, it's probably not coming out too great on camera, but there's another clip that is connected to the airbox, I believe, so that will come off. And then there should be a screw just down here, a bolt even. This bolt will come off, and then hopefully we should be able to remove the airbox. Once we remove the airbox, I'll then see about loosening off this bolt here for the power steering. I think it's power steering reservoir. It is, yep. And there's another one just down here. That's coming out okay. So if I remove them, that should give me a bit more room to maneuver. This space should be free. Then I just need to disconnect the other end of the breather pipe potentially. To make some more space as well, I will probably look to unhook some of these relays for the fuel pump. And ultimately there's also a bracket just here of 2 bolts, quite a restrictive bracket down here, which I think is going to get in the way of me getting to some of the bolts. So if I can get a bit more wiggle room and allow this wiring loom to move up a bit, then I think that will make life a bit easier. And just over here, just down here, there's going to be a fuel line that I'm going to need to release using a tool I bought from Amazon. There's a set of plastic rings that I'll be looking to do that. Once I've kind of created some space, then I should be in a position whereby I can then sort of crack on with removing the coil cover. Oh, and also this this dipstick here is going to be quite problematic, I think. There should be a technique whereby I can get to the 7mm retaining bolt, which enables a bit of movement there, but I think actually what I'm going to try and do is just try and relieve the dipstick. I'll keep it in its tube, but just try and relieve the tube by pulling it up towards me, and if I can just get enough clearance over the bolt there, then I should be good just to move that out of the way. If that doesn't work, then I think I'm looking at trying to bend the clip on the dipstick tube to get it free over the holder that it usually attaches to. Once I've done that, I should be able to remove this coil cover. I'll then be able to remove the coils by disconnecting them individually, and then actually just using I think it's a 8mm bolt that holds on each coil, free them off, remove them. Now if they're original Denso coils, then that'll be a stroke of luck, they're really easy to remove. If not, I suspect if it's some cheap replacements, then I suspect I'll be looking at having to dig out the boots potentially, but that may become easier if I leave them in there and just the boots, not the whole coils obviously, and proceed with then removing the cam cover itself, this thermoplastic cam cover. If I can do that, then I think that'll give me more room to get the broken boots out. The one on the other side were quite problematic, to be honest, but I've got them all out and replaced them with new coils. Then once I've got this cover off, then obviously it's a case of just replacing the gaskets, the spark plug boss seals that are in there as well, and then it's just going to be a case of fitting it all up and repeating, basically reversing what I've done today in terms of the removal steps. Well, the weather hasn't failed to disappoint. We've got torrential rain coming down here, which is really unhelpful, but at least I've got the marquee or gazebo up to stop me getting completely soaked. Meanwhile, turning back to the engine bay, I've been able to remove the air pipe, the breather hose connection there, and also I've been able to remove the air box. There's a connector there, and also I've had to take off the trim that runs across here. Quite straightforward, just a few lugs holding it in across the bay, and that enables me to remove the air intake here into the air box. One of the screws went AWOL, but I'm sure I can probably fish that out later on. So now I think it's just a question of moving on to looking to free off this power steering reservoir here with the 2 bolts here and here, and that should give me a bit more room. And hopefully, if the rain stops just for a brief moment, I can lean across the car and have a look at the dipstick and see. So a quick recap as to where we are. Well, it's still raining, not great, but we've managed to release the power steering reservoir. The dipstick, in the end, I needed to cut a line there with a hacksaw. I can now get access to the bolt, which is good news. Up over here, I've removed the 2 bolts there just to give a little bit more room. Not a huge amount of room around there, to be honest. I still think I may struggle to get access to the bolt at the rear, but we'll give it a go. The other thing I've been able to do just in here is I can just move that around. Just in here, I've been able to release the fuel line. So there's a special clip that goes around here, and you push that way, and it frees off the fuel line, and you can see the other end here just on the rag, just tucked out the way. So now the next step will be to remove this coil cover, and then we'll just free off down here the harness. We'll start removing the coils, and then we're into removing all the bolts for the cam cover itself. So the coil covers come off. I've also been able to undo the coil bolts as well, and then after that I've disconnected the coils from the coil loom, which you can just see up there by the supercharger, just tucked out the way. And then I've been able to pull out the coils, and you can see here, bit hit and miss. First one's fine, and a little bit of oil in there, not much, too much though. Second one, you can see the boots come off because no one bothered to use the dielectric grease, so that's seized on, stuck on the bottom. So I'm going to have to remove that. I'll probably do that when I take the cam cover off to give me a bit easier access. Third one, you can see, is come out in one piece, but it's full of and covered in oil, so I'm going to have to suck out some oil. And then the fourth one, you can see that's gotten stuck in there. The boots got stuck in there, so again that'll have to be pulled out. Now I'll do this when I've actually taken off the cam cover. So the cam cover bolts are all nice and loose, and I can now wiggle this about. There are a couple of bolts that did actually come out, so they're safely stowed away so they don't fall into the bowels of the engine bay. So when it stops raining, what I'll actually do is just lift this out, and then I'll probably do a trick of just laying out some cling film across the entire top of the right hand bank to stop anything ingressing into where it shouldn't be. And then that gives me an opportunity to inspect the surfaces, also sort out those coil boots which are still stuck in a couple of them, and also to syringe out some of the oil from the bores. And then we can start cleaning up the surfaces around the gasket, where the gasket goes, and then also start prepping up the cover as well, give it a clean whilst it's out, and fit the new gasket, and then we start doing the reverse of the fitting process. So I thought I'd do a quick recap of where we are. You can see here I've got cling film covering up the top section here where the timing chain tensioners are, to stop any erroneous things falling down there. Use cling film for that, and in fact I covered up most of this whilst I was working on it with cling film. What I've been able to do is, as best as possible, try and clean up the edge of the block where the gasket will meet the surface of the block or the cam cover. You can see a bit outline there, but actually, to be honest, that's perfectly smooth, so I'm not too worried about that. And I've done that all the way around the block. So, and I've also been able to clean up just down here. I'll get the camera around. Just down here, there's a whole load of oil on that lower section, just down there. So that's been cleaned up as well, even cleaned right at the back there as well. So the surface is now pretty much ready. I should also mention that we were able to change the spark plugs as well whilst we had this off. So we've now got a whole new set of Champion Iridium spark plugs. So here's the cam cover upside down. I've already taken out the gasket that goes all the way around, and I've also cleaned up the surfaces with some all-purpose cleaner. Quite straightforward. I've also extracted the spark plug boss seals as well. They were completely crushed in, which you kind of expect. I think they may have been possibly original, job to tell, but they're very, very flat. So what I'm going to do now, the cam cover is cleaned up. I've also cleaned it up on the other side. I'm going to fit the spark plug boss seals, and then afterwards I'm then going to fit this new genuine Jaguar gasket into the cam cover, and then I think we should be ready to flip it over again, check it's all true, and then start to place some of the bolts in the head, ready to have it offered up. So the genuine Jaguar gasket has been offered up, and you can see here it's a really good fit, unlike some of the other non-Jaguar ones that get offered up, which can be a bit awkward. Very pleased with that. Seated nicely all the way around. I've not used any gasket sealant. In fact, all I'll be doing in terms of gasket sealant is on the actual engine block I'll be putting a corresponding blob about probably about just a centimetre, just going across here and here and here even. I'll just do that actually on the block though, rather than the gasket, so that will line up quite nicely. And if you just look in here, you can see we've now got the new spark plug boss seals in, nice and plump, much better than the flat ones that were on there previously, which obviously were quite degraded and letting oil into the spark plug bores. So the cam cover is now back on, and all of the bolts have been torqued. Now it's worth noting that the ones on the lower part of the cam cover, with the exception of one or two down here, it's almost impossible to get a torque wrench on it to set the Newton meters tighten of 12 Newton meters. So the easiest way to do that is to get a feel on the ones that you can get purchase on, and then immediately go and tighten up the other ones and do it by feel. So I've been able to refit the cover, coil cover there after connecting obviously the coils. I've also been able to, just in here, be able to reconnect the fuel line, and here I've just tidied up the bracket holding this back in place, and also just down here I've been able to, if that comes around, been able to tighten up these two screws here which hold the brackets. That's all nice and firm. If I come down here, I've been able to refit the air box, so there's a mount point down there which is really important to get aligned, and then there's the screw just down there. But prior to doing that, I was able to tighten up the nut, the 8mm nut that goes around the dipstick. That's all fine, and also just this one here and here, these two here, just to hold the power steering reservoir back in place. Coming forward, I've been able to refit this trim just on here. These poppers aren't amazingly secure, but I think it'll be held in place by the bonnet anyway. And then I've been able to put on the air intake just here and just tighten up these Jubilee, whoops, move over a bit, and tighten up these Jubilee clips just here, and also the one just here. And then finally I've connected the mass airflow sensor and also the breather hose just in there. So I think all I've got to do now is put the cover on. So I'll do that, and then hopefully we'll just check around for any leaks, but I'm not really expecting any leaks now that cam cover's been done, just like the right bank one was done just the other week. Well, there's a bit of blue smoke blowing out from the left bank exhaust, which is to be expected because some of the oil dropped down from the spark plug bores where these spark boss seals have been failing previously, so hopefully that's stopped. So what I'll be doing next is letting it get up to temperature, and then I'll have a good nose around to make sure that we're not losing oil on the cam cover seals. That's the most important thing. That's the whole point of doing the job. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that. It's just coming up to temperature and no signs of any oil leaks yet. So I'm just checking the right bank, which was done about a week or so ago. Just checking along to make sure that there's no leaks coming through. It looks pretty dry down there. Yep, pretty happy with that. So just on the left bank, just having a quick look now, it's fully up to temperature. So far so good. There we go. Just in that. Yep. Pretty dry. Very pleased.
Thanks very much for watching. I hope you found some of that useful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking the video And if you're not subscribed already, please consider subscribing for plenty of more content concerning the STR coming along very soon.